Now it's gonna work.
Welcome back to the deep dive. You know that feeling, that fundamental sense of just being, that I am. It's the most basic thing, really.
It absolutely is. It's
Yeah.
right there all the time.
But how often do we actually stop and, dig into what that means? What is this I am that feels like the absolute center of everything?
It's funny, isn't it? It's the foundation of our whole experience, but we mostly just take it for granted. We don't often question it deeply.
Exactly. And today, well, we're diving deep into a source that tackles this head on. We're looking at excerpts from I Am That. It's based on talks by Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj.
Ah, yes. A really powerful text. Many people see it as uniquely direct. It doesn't pull any punches when it comes to understanding reality and, well, ourselves.
And it's not like some dense academic work, is it? It came from actual conversations.
That's right. It's basically Q&A sessions. Maharaj, who's, a pretty ordinary guy running a small shop in Mumbai, talking with all sorts of people, seekers, philosophers, regular folks, asking these incredibly deep questions.
About everything, right? Consciousness, reality, suffering.
Oh, yeah. The nature of the absolute, destiny, how to actually live a spiritual life day to day. It covers a huge range.
And that Q&A format keeps it really grounded, I think. It's not just abstract theory.
Definitely. It responds to genuine human questions and confusion.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to navigate through some of this really rich, sometimes challenging material. We want to pull out the key insights, the core messages from Maharaj.
And help you, the listener, connect with it. What's he really saying about who we are, about the world we see? What's the path to, well, whatever it is he's pointing towards?
Let's unpack it. Be prepared, though, because some of this stuff really challenges fundamental assumptions.
It certainly does. It gets right to the root.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. The absolute foundation Maharaj keeps pointing to is I am. He says it's the primary fact, the basis of everything. What's he getting at there?
He means, quite literally, that before you experience anything else, seeing this room, hearing my voice, having a thought, you first have to be. There have to be that sense I exist.
Ah, okay, so the awareness of being comes first.
It's the prerequisite. The I am is the knowing that you are. Without that, nothing else registers for you. It's the canvas, you could say, that all other experiences appear on.
So the world I see, the thoughts I think, the feelings I feel, they all depend on this basic sense of being here, this I am.
Precisely. That's why he stresses its foundational nature. There's a key quote where he says something like, all knowledge is about the I am.
Right.
And he says, false ideas about this I am lead to bondage. Right knowledge leads to freedom and happiness. That's huge.
Wow. So getting this I am right or wrong is the difference between suffering and freedom.
According to Maharaj, yes. It's that fundamental. Our whole experience of life hinges on how we understand and relate to this core sense of being. If we layer false ideas onto it, like I am this body, I am this personality, that creates suffering. Understanding its true nature leads to liberation.
That's a pretty radical claim. So how does he actually describe this I am? What is it in its pure form?
Well, he describes it as consciousness being aware of itself, the knowingness of existence. But, and this is crucial before we slap labels on it, it's actually indescribable.
Or qualities, no attributes.
Not in its pure state,
Yeah,
just presence.
Yeah.
Before you say, I am something, just the I am, the pure, unqualified awareness of being.
And that's something everyone can recognize, right? You listening right now, whatever else is going on, there's that undeniable sense, I am here. It feels more fundamental than your thoughts, your body, anything.
Exactly. That's the immediate experience he's pointing to. The source calls this self or I am, the common factor at the root of all experience, the awareness in which everything happens.
It's the background against which everything appears.
Yes. And the entire universe of your conscious experience, all your thoughts, perceptions, feelings, it's all happening within this I am.
He has that image, doesn't he, about consciousness being like a film.
Yeah, the entire field of consciousness is only as a film or a speck in I am.
Just a speck. That really puts it in perspective. Our whole complex world of thoughts and experiences, is tiny compared to the vastness of this fundamental being.
It emphasizes the primacy of being itself over the content of being conscious. The I am is the reality. The thoughts and perceptions are fleeting appearances within it.
So the first step in this whole inquiry is just to really acknowledge that, to recognize this I am as the foundation, not to analyze it yet, just notice it.
Exactly. Recognize it.
Yeah.
Feel it. It's not something you need to find outside yourself. It's the very knowing that's looking. That's the starting point.
Okay, so I am is the foundation. Got it. But then, and this is where my head starts to spin a little, Maharaj says this I am, this fundamental sense of being, it's not the ultimate reality, not the excellent.
Yes, this is a really critical distinction in his teaching. It's where he differentiates his path from others that might equate I am with the final goal. He introduces two key concepts here: consciousness and awareness.
Okay, consciousness, how does he define that?
Consciousness in his usage is always relative. It's partial, it changes constantly, and it's always consciousness of something.
Like, I'm conscious of this microphone, conscious of my thoughts.
Exactly. It requires a subject and an object. It arises, he says, on contact with the senses, the world, or even inner objects like thoughts. Because it depends on this contact and has content, it's inherently limited and always shifting.
So my moment-to-moment experience of being aware of things, that's consciousness.
Yes, he uses that cinema analogy we mentioned earlier. The light, which he likens to the self, is constant, but when it hits the film, our mind experiences it, gets colored, animated, seems to move and change. That changing projection, that's consciousness.
Okay, so if consciousness is the changing movie, what's awareness?
Awareness is presented as much more fundamental, primordial even. It's absolute, beginningless, endless. It doesn't depend on anything. It's uncaused, unsupported, unchanging.
Wow, that sounds completely different.
It is. It's described as total, calm, silent. While consciousness needs an object, awareness is simply aware. It's the potential for knowing, but it doesn't need something to be known to exist.
It exists even if there's nothing to be conscious of.
That's the key point. He describes it as the common matrix of every experience, but says it can exist without consciousness.
Yeah.
His prime example is deep, dreamless sleep.
Right. In deep sleep, I'm not conscious of anything. No thoughts, no world, no body, but he says there's still awareness.
Precisely. He says he is aware of being unconscious in deep sleep. This points to a state of pure awareness that underlies everything, even the complete shutdown of the conscious mind. Awareness is the screen. Consciousness is the projected movie. The screen is still there when the projector is off.
Mind blown. Okay, so where does the I am fit back into this picture? We started saying it was the foundation.
The I am, while foundational for our experience, is seen here as a manifestation within awareness. It's closely tied to consciousness and, crucially, to the body.
Ah, the body link.
Yes. The source says the sense or taste of I amness is not absolutely beyond time. It disappears when the body dies. This is a huge point. The feeling I exist, the sense of presence, arises with the body-mind mechanism.
So it's not eternal, it's temporary.
It's temporary. It depends on the body being alive and functioning. Therefore, it cannot be the timeless, absolute reality.
Wow. Okay, so the most fundamental thing I feel I am is itself just a temporary state that arises and disappears.
According to this teaching, yes. And the ultimate reality, the absolute, is prior even to this I am. It's described as completely beyond words, beyond description.
The unmanifest source.
Exactly. It is this state which is most real, the state of pure potentiality, which is prior to everything. The I am and the universe are mere reflections of it.
Okay, hold on. So the I am that feels like me and the entire universe I perceive through it are just reflections of some indescribable absolute that comes before them.
That's the radical shift in perspective he's offering. You are not just the thoughts and feelings you're conscious of. You're not even just the sense of, I am tied to your body. Those are appearances. What you truly are, fundamentally, is that primordial, changeless awareness, the absolute itself.
So for you listening, this is immense. That core feeling, I am, it's being pointed to as a reflection, not the source. Your deepest nature is described as something absolute, unchanging, timeless, something present even when you, as you know yourself, aren't conscious, like in deep sleep. How does considering that possibility shift things? It's not about what you're aware of, but the awareness itself.
And the contrast is laid out clearly. Awareness is primordial, beginningless, endless, uncaused, without change. Consciousness is on contact, a reflection, a state of duality, partial and changeful. And the kicker, There can be no consciousness without awareness, but there can be awareness without consciousness. Understanding this is key to the whole path.
Okay, so if the I am is a manifestation and the absolute is beyond it, what about this? Me, I usually think I am. My personality, my history, my name.
Yeah, Maharaj is very direct about that. The person, the individual you believe yourself to be, isn't seen as a real, lasting thing. It's a construct.
A construct made of what?
Mostly memory, habits, desires, and this strong identification with the body and the mind. The source puts it bluntly. In reality, there are no persons, only threads of memories and habits.
Threads of memories and habits. That doesn't sound very solid or continuous. It feels pretty real most of the time.
It feels real because we constantly reinforce it. We link the present moment to past experiences. This happened to me, and project that identity forward. I want this. I fear that. It's a story we build and tell ourselves about who we are.
Like living inside a movie based on past clips and future trailers.
That's a good way to put it. And this identification as a separate person creates a very specific, often difficult relationship with the world. Maharaj contrasts this. Your world is something alien, and you are afraid of it. My world is myself. I am at home.
Your world is something alien. That hits home. It often does feel like the world is this separate, unpredictable thing out there, something to navigate or even fight against.
That feeling comes directly from identifying as a separate person facing an external world. But if you realize your true nature isn't limited to that person, the world isn't separate anymore. It's experienced as part of yourself. The alien world is the one we perceive through the filter of the person.
The filter. He is that image of a net, right?
Yes, the net of our desires. We don't see reality as it is. We see it filtered through what we want, what we fear, our judgments, our conditioning. It gets divided into pleasure and pain, right and wrong, inner and outer.
Wow. So the world I experience is heavily colored by my own internal state, my desires and fears.
You have created them out of your own desires and fears. You deal with them. The constant struggle, the dissatisfaction that's seen as arising from this filtered personal view of the world, driven by the identified self.
And this ties directly into suffering, doesn't it? Desire is pointed to as the root.
Absolutely. Specifically, the desire for embodied existence is the root cause of trouble. It's not just wanting specific things, but the fundamental drive to be this separate self in a body. And within that, seeking happiness in things that change possessions, status, even relationships, sometimes is bound to be fleeting.
Because they pass away.
Exactly. True happiness cannot be found in things that change and pass away. The argument is that suffering isn't primarily caused by bad luck or external events, but by this internal misidentification and the desires that fuel it.
The text also mentions the subtle body, the antakarana mind, intellect, ego, memory. How does that fit in?
That's seen as the inner mechanism that arises along with the I am idea. The two are one, the source says. This subtle body is what takes the pure light of awareness and, like that whirling mirror analogy,
Converts sunlight into patterns.
right, it converts the simple light of the self into the diverse, complex world we perceive. But this whole apparatus, this subtle body and the world it projects, is described as having only momentary or empirical reality. It seems real from the viewpoint of the I am, but not from the absolute viewpoint.
Okay, so let's recap this for the listener. The idea here is that the you normally think you are, your name, your story, your personality, isn't fundamentally real or permanent. It's a temporary structure built on the I am. And this I am itself is just a reflection of the absolute awareness and the world you see. It's heavily filtered, maybe even created by this personal structure, this subtle body.
It completely undermines the perceived solidity of both the self and the world. As Maharaj says, when you believe yourself to be a person, you see persons everywhere. Your whole reality gets structured around this initial identification.
Right. So if the person is a construct and the world is filtered through it, how on earth do we get beyond that? How do we find the reality that's supposedly underneath all this? What's the path?
Well, Maharaj's approach is often called the direct path, or jnana marga, the path of knowledge or inquiry. And a core method he emphasizes is, perhaps surprisingly, refusal and rejection.
Refusal. Rejecting what?
Rejecting everything you are not. The idea isn't to gain something new or become a better person. It's about systematically seeing through and discarding all the false identifications.
Like the body, the thoughts, the feelings.
Exactly. The roles you play, the stories you tell yourself, all of it. By eliminating what's false, what's true, your real nature naturally shines forth. It's already there. The source says it clearly. By knowing what you are not, you come to know yourself. The way back to yourself is through refusal and rejection.
It's like clearing away the clutter to see what was there all along. Discard all you are not and go ever deeper.
Precisely. And this process requires intense observation, keen discernment, which brings us to the absolute necessity of attention.
Attention comes up again and again.
It's paramount. Attention, alertness, being constantly aware. These are the essential tools for purifying the mind and dismantling these false identifications. Maharaj stressed this. Don't undervalue attention. It means interest and also love. All the blessings flow from it.
Attention is love. That gives it a different feel, doesn't it? Not just rigid concentration, but an engaged, caring presence.
Yes, and this loving attention is directed inwards. It helps in turning the mind away from everything else by focusing specifically on that root sense, I am.
So a central practice isn't some complex technique, but simply bringing your focus back again and again to that feeling of existing.
That's a core instruction. Refuse all thoughts except one, the thought, I am. He advises, be with it all the time you can spare until you revert to it spontaneously. There is no simpler and easier way. Anchor your awareness in that basic presence. Other thoughts will come.
Of course, the mind doesn't just stop.
Right. But you gently, persistently bring the attention back to I am.
That sounds simple, but I imagine keeping that focus with all the mental noise is challenging.
It definitely is, which is why another key practice he describes is watching the mind, observing your thoughts, but without getting tangled up in them.
Being a detached witness to the stream.
Exactly, like watching traffic on a street. Watch your thoughts as you watch the street traffic. Don't judge them, don't follow them, don't analyze them, just notice them passing by. This observation itself weakens the power they have over you, the emotional links that, as the Source says, perpetuate the bondage.
You create space between yourself, the watcher, and the thoughts. And the Source suggests you can even weave in questions while watching, like, who am I? Or what's real here?
Yes. Those inquiries arise naturally from watching. They help you see the fleeting nature of thoughts and the constructed self.
Now, here's something fascinating. He lays out these practices: refusal, attention, watching, which sound like they require effort, right? But then he also talks about realization being effortless, spontaneous. How do those fit together?
Ah, the paradox. It's central to many paths, isn't it? The effort, the sadhana, is necessary initially. It's the work of clearing the obstacles, purifying the mind, breaking the strong habits of identification, developing that capacity for focused attention.
So the effort is against the ignorance and conditioning.
Exactly. But the realization itself, the actual seeing of your true nature, isn't something you achieve through effort. It's a recognition of what's already true. It happens when the mind, through all that preparatory work, becomes quiet enough, clear enough, that it stops obscuring the reality that's always present.
When the mind is quiet, we come to know ourselves as the pure witness.
And that quietness isn't forced. It comes from that steady, attentive redirection. Maharaj is also very clear that realization isn't a gradual buildup. He says, there are no steps to self-realization. There's nothing gradual about it. It happens suddenly and is irreversible.
Suddenly, not step by step.
The idea of steps belongs to the mind and time. The truth is timeless, already here. The effort works within time to dissolve the mental fog. The seeing happens in an instant, outside of time. He also talks about just living life naturally but watchfully. Just live your life as it comes, but alertly, watchfully, doing the natural things the natural way.
And even there's nothing to do, just be, do nothing, which sounds completely passive.
It points to the state after the main struggle with ignorance is over. Being becomes effortless. But he also offers an alternative for those who find the path of effort and inquiry daunting, who feel they lack the stamina or self-reliance.
What's the alternative?
Trust.
Trust. Trust in what?
Trust in the teaching, trust in the guru, whether that's an external teacher like Maharaj or one's own inner guidance, that intuitive sense.
He says something like, there is an alternative to sadhana, which is trust. He saw it as a hopeful option for some.
Yes. Just trust me enough to begin with, he advises. Every step proves or disproves itself. Trust gives you the courage to start, even without full intellectual understanding, and then your own experience starts to validate that trust.
That makes it more accessible, perhaps. And underlying any approach, he stresses honesty, right? Integrity.
Absolutely. Earnestness, being free from contradictions between your stated goal and how you actually live. Tenacity of purpose and honesty in pursuit will bring you to your goal. Sincerity is key.
These are really practical pointers, even if they sound simple. For you listening, think about it. How could you try watching the mind for just a few minutes without judging what comes up? What happens if you try gently to stay with that sense of I am? And maybe consider approaching this whole thing not just as hard work, but with a little bit of trust. Trusting that maybe, just maybe, the answer isn't somewhere else, but right here. These aren't just ideas, they're invitations to experiment with your own awareness.
They're designed to shift your whole orientation from being lost in the contents of experience to recognizing the experiencer and ultimately the awareness itself.
So, what happens then if this realization dawns, if the person is seen through? What does that state, the state of the jnani, actually look like, according to Maharaj?
The core description is becoming established as the pure witness.
We talked about watching the mind as a practice. This is the realization of being the witness.
Precisely. The practice cultivates the ground, and then the realization flowers. When the mind is quiet, we come to know ourselves as the pure witness. It's not just verbing thoughts anymore. It's the direct knowing that your fundamental identity is that detached, pure awareness. You stand apart from the whole show.
We withdraw from the experience and its experiencer and stand apart in pure awareness. That sounds like a massive shift. The center of gravity moves completely.
It is the identification with that bundle of thoughts, feelings, and body sensations. The person just dissolves. It ceases to be who you think you are.
At the moment of realization, the person ceases. It's such a stark phrase. Does it mean the Janani becomes like a zombie? No personality?
No, not at all. It means the identification with being that limited, separate person is gone. The body and mind might continue functioning, interacting, having characteristics, but the inner conviction, I am this limited person, is finished. They're described as egoless.
No self definitions.
Right. He is completely rid of himself.
Yeah.
The realized man is egoless. He has lost the capacity of identifying himself with anything. They don't define themselves by their past, their thoughts, their roles anymore.
So if they aren't a person, what are they?
The source describes them as being essentially placeless, timeless, one with everything. They're the awareness that contains the world, not a separate entity within it.
And this naturally leads to fearlessness.
Yes, a profound, unshakable fearlessness. Because if you're no longer identified with the fragile, temporary person, what is there to fear? Death loses its sting because you know you aren't the body that dies.
Being the world, I am not afraid of the world. Being all, what am I to be afraid of?
Exactly. If you realize your nature is the totality, threat becomes meaningless. And from another angle, I am nothing, no specific thing, and nothing is afraid of no thing. If there's no limited self to protect, fear has no ground to stand on.
It's also linked to realizing oneself as smaller than the point of a needle.
Yes, that points to transcending the limitations of physical form and space altogether. It's a paradox, infinitely small, yet encompassing everything. It breaks our usual logic.
And how does action work in this state? Are they just passive?
No, action happens through them, but they aren't the doer in the personal sense. They aren't acting out of personal desire or fear. Their very being, their presence is action.
Man is not the actor. His is to be aware of what is going on. His very presence is action.
Action flows spontaneously, appropriately for the situation, aligned with the whole rather than from a separate ego trying to control things. It comes back to that radical do nothing, be. Action arises naturally from that state of being.
What about love? We often think of love as being between people.
In this context, love is seen as the inherent nature of reality when the illusion of separation dissolves. When the sense of distinction and separation is absent, you may call it love. If there's no fundamental other, then the natural state is one of unity, which feels like love.
No strangers.
In love, there are no strangers because you see the same underlying reality in everyone. It's contrasted with desire, which is always selective, wanting this, not that. This love is non-selective, indiscriminate, just a natural radiation of realized unity.
And the descriptions of Maharaj himself seem to reflect this, don't they? His simplicity, his humility, not some grand guru figure.
Exactly. The accounts stress he was just an ordinary man outwardly, running his shop, yet radiating this profound understanding. He didn't rely on scriptures. It was direct realization. He treated everyone the same, seeing the same essence in them.
But the source also warns us not to judge by appearances, right? Ajnani might still laugh or cry.
Yes, absolutely. They may laugh and cry according to circumstances, but inwardly they are cool and clear, watching detachedly their own spontaneous reactions. Appearances are misleading, and more so in the case of Ajnani. They aren't robots. Emotions might arise, but there's no identification with them. They are watched from that place of deep inner stillness and clarity.
This paints such a different picture of human potential, a state beyond fear, beyond ego, rooted in unity and effortless being. For you listening, how does this stack up against the goals we usually chase? Success, security, being liked? Does true freedom maybe lie in letting go of who we think we are rather than trying to gain more stuff for that invented self? It really makes you question what a truly fulfilling life looks like.
It shifts the whole game from chasing external validation to discovering internal, timeless reality.
Okay, so this deep dive into I am that fundamentally challenges how we see ourselves in the world. How does Maharaj's perspective specifically reshape concepts like suffering, cause and effect, destiny, even the role of effort?
It reframes them completely, viewing them from the standpoint of realization versus the standpoint of the identified person. Suffering, as we touched on, is seen as stemming directly from ignorance, forgetting who you truly are, and identifying with the false self.
So it's not bad luck, it's misunderstanding.
Fundamentally, yes. You have created them sorrows out of your own desires and fears. All is due to your having forgotten your own being. Suffering is bound up with the constant seesaw of pleasure and pain that dominates the life of the separate self.
And peace comes from seeing them as one.
To know that pain and pleasure are one is peace. Peace arises not from getting only pleasure, but from transcending the duality altogether, seeing both as transient waves on the surface of reality, experienced from a place of non-identification. This ties back to the world itself being like a dream.
Not ultimately real in the way the absolute is.
Correct. Your world is transient, changeful. You are dreaming. He calls it a show, glittering and empty. It is and yet is not. It has a relative reality, but it's not the ultimate truth and the way out of the suffering inherent in this dream.
All you have to do is to see the dream as dream.
Exactly. Recognizing the illusory, conditional nature of the phenomenal world loosens its grip on you. And this perspective also completely reworks our usual understanding of cause and effect.
Which seems so basic. A causes B. How does that change?
Maharaj suggests causality is a mental framework we impose, tied to our perception of linear time. It is the illusion of time that makes you talk of causality. He says, when the past and the future are seen in the timeless now, the idea of cause-effect loses its validity.
So in the now, there's no sequence. It's all simultaneous.
From that timeless perspective, yes, past, present, future are all part of one pattern. Cause and effect is just a way of thinking. While it seems like desire leads to actions and results within the dream, from the absolute view, linear causality dissolves. Each moment contains the whole of the past and creates the whole of the future.
Whoa. Okay, what about destiny, karma, free will, that whole tangled mess?
Well, the text suggests destiny or karma really binds the person, the one identified with the body-mind. They are caught in the chain of past conditioning leading to future results. Between what had happened and what must happen, you are caught. Call it destiny or karma, but never freedom.
So the person is subject to karma, but the true self isn't.
That's the idea. True freedom comes from realizing your true nature, which is prior to all conditioning and causality, and then acting from that space. First, return to your true being and then act from the heart of love. Action from that place is spontaneous and free, not predetermined.
And finally, effort. We talked about it being necessary, but also realization being effortless. How does he view things like extreme asceticism?
Effort is needed when ignorance is strong, when the habits of identification are obstinate. You need effort to cultivate awareness. But the natural state itself is effortless. In complete obedience to nature, there is no effort. Even the effort made is seen as part of the natural unfolding. But, and this is important, effort based on violence, even self-violence, like harsh austerities, if it's done without understanding, is seen as fruitless.
So forcing or punishing yourself misses the point. The effort should be aimed at clarity, not self-flagellation.
Exactly. Understanding is key. Blind effort can just create a more rigid spiritual ego instead of dissolving the ego altogether.
So for you listening, how does this shift your perspective? If suffering stems from identification, how might you approach difficulties differently? If cause, effect, and destiny are maybe just mental frameworks for the person, does that change your sense of agency or how you view your life's unfolding? It's a deep internal reorientation away from controlling the external towards understanding the internal.
The focus moves from manipulating the dream to waking up from it by understanding the dreamer.
This deep dive into I am that has really taken us down the rabbit hole, hasn't it? To the roots of who we think we are and how we see reality. We started with that fundamental I am, then unpacked Maharaj's crucial distinction between relative consciousness and absolute awareness. We saw how the person is viewed as a construct of mind, memory, and desire.
Then we explored the path, the role of attention, the method of refusal, I am not this, not that, the alternative of trust. and we glimpse the state of the realized one, the Jnani, egoless, fearless, living as a witness, beyond the usual interpretations of suffering, causality, and destiny.
And the main point, the constant refrain, is that this isn't just fascinating philosophy. It's about your direct experience right here, right now. It's about your sense of being, the self you take yourself to be, the world you perceive. The invitation is consistently investigate yourself, look within.
And then there's the most radical assertion of all. Maharaj insists repeatedly that you are already that ultimate reality. You are the absolute, here and now. You haven't lost it. You've just temporarily forgotten or failed to recognize it.
He says, absolute perfection is here and now, not in some future. And the goal isn't achieving it, but realizing it. To realize this as absolutely true is liberation.
He tells people directly, and by extension, he's telling you, you are in no way different from me, only you do not know it. And I can see with the utmost clarity that you have never been, nor are, nor will be estranged from reality, that you are the fullness of perfection here and now.
That just turns the whole spiritual search on its head, doesn't it? What if all the striving, all the seeking for something more, something better, something else is based on a false premise? What if you're already home?
What if liberation isn't about becoming something new, but about simply, fully recognizing what you have always been, timeless, fearless, complete awareness?
What would it feel like to trust that possibility, even just for a moment, to let go of the idea that you're fundamentally flawed or lacking and just rest in the being that you are?
It's a profound question to sit with. And Maharaj's final instruction perhaps sums it all up. Go within and discover what you are not. Nothing else matters.
Definitely a lot to reflect on, to explore in your own way. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into I Am That. We really hope it sparked some insights or maybe just some interesting questions for your own journey.
Take these ideas not just as concepts, but as invitations to look closely at your own direct experience.
Until next time.